These ancient myths are all about sex and violence. You know, somebody getting their head or some other body part lopped off. What's specifically cool about Greek mythology is that the gods and the goddesses are so human. They look like us, they act like us. There's jealousy among the wives and their player husbands. There's competition, the threat of being overthrown.
We're starting to get into the story of the Titans. We're telling about this back and forth battle between the parents and the children of the gods and the Titans.
You will never be the ruler of Olympus. The cycle ends here.
Kratos has father issues. Kratos has family issues. It really is a story about fathers and sons, actually.
The death and deception between father and son is a classic theme of these myths. Kronos, the Titan, overthrowing his father Uranus, the sky, and then Zeus, the god, overthrowing his father Kronos.
There's always going to be purists. Certainly there are aspects of God of War which certain classicists will probably find inaccurate, but they are overlooking the fact that mythology is really the first form of entertainment.
Homer told these stories the way that would work best in 8th century Greece. We have to tell these stories for 21st century America and the rest of the world.
That's the good thing about a myth. It's not a textbook.
It needs to be a game. We got to be true to that. So we're going to take liberties. It's all done with a respect for Greek mythology.
You know, success isn't going back to obscure texts that deal with Greek mythology. It was more about what do people actually associate with these gods and these characters based on maybe what you had heard about Greek mythology as a kid or from watching movies and things like that.
I have lived in the shadow of the gods for long enough. The time of the gods has come to an end.
God of War explains, or ultimately will explain, why there are no more Greek myths. There's certainly the story of Kratos, but above that is really about, does man need God? You know, why does he need God?
And with 2, we're kind of pulling the camera back a little bit. If 1 was in close, and we were kind of telling the small story, and we hinted towards threads that connected to a much larger story, it's as if we're pulling back on this world map of God of War and saying, oh wow, there's something even bigger.
It's going to be hell on earth as these guys basically battle it out for who ultimately is going to be sitting in that throne. I think people will be very surprised with how this thing all comes to a head.
Zeus is the big one. Zeus is the king of the gods.
His name is related to the word for light. He's a sky god. He's in charge of the weather. In particular, he's in charge of thunder and lightning and the power that you associate with the sky.
Zeus is cool. I like to think of Zeus as the player god. You know, he's like the Mac Daddy of the gods, because Zeus is always finding some beautiful mortal babe, and he goes down and seduces or woos the babe and gets into all sorts of trouble. Usually though, since he's a god, what can you do to it? Nothing, right? Nothing.
Now I will show you the true power of a god.
The other gods are afraid of him, rightly so, because he's more powerful than they are. He seems to be more intelligent than they are, although not always, because he can be fooled. He's frequently fooled, actually.
I wanted Zeus to be the classical interpretation of Zeus. Zeus is the strong, powerful overseer of all of the gods. But I also wanted him to have a tiny bit of humanity, and the humanity being that he's afraid. He's kind of always looking over his shoulder.
Zeus is basically willing to, you know, let the world below be damned and crumble, and the humans that they lord over just, you know, suffer because he wants to hang on to his seat of power on Mount Olympus.
Olympus will prevail.
As the life drained out of Kratos, the arms of Hades reached out to claim their prize.
Hades is Zeus's brother, and Hades and Poseidon, 3 of them, split up the universe. Hades, by all accounts, got the short end of the stick.
He got sent down to the underworld where all the dead people went, right? The stiffs. For the Greeks, it wasn't a place of punishment. It wasn't like our sense of heaven and hell. People went there when they died, and everybody went there, good, bad, and indifferent.
You know, Hades, he's got his fierce helmet on with the spikes coming out, and he's got the spikes all over his armor, and that's the same kind of, the underworld is the same kind of feel. Grotesque shapes with very thorny, aggressive angles, very, very uncomfortable.
To go to the underworld and to come back is a very difficult thing. In general, the only people that do are either superhuman heroes or actual demigods. So it's a very unique thing. For most people, it's a one-way ticket. Poseidon is Zeus's other brother. Poseidon is in charge of all the seas and all the oceans and everything in them. Because in the Greek perspective, the oceans sort of held up the lands, Poseidon is also in charge of earthquakes.
He's got a trident, this three-pronged spear. And sort of like Zeus with his lightning bolts, you don't want to mess with Poseidon, because when he gets stirred up, the whole world gets stirred up, because he just takes his trident and he just starts churning that sea. Interestingly, a lot of people don't associate him with horses, but he was said to have fashioned the first horses, and he shaped them. If you think of a horse galloping, sort of like waves falling.
In the Iliad, Poseidon is likened to a child kicking over sandcastles when he goes to destroy the walls of Troy. So, like many gods, you do not want to mess with Poseidon.
Kratos, you know not what you do.
Athena, the gray-eyed Athena, the patron goddess of Athens. You know, her temple was on the Acropolis. She's the daughter of Zeus. She sprang out of his head in one of these great mythic moments that defy rationality. You can't explain it. That's what makes myths different.
Zeus gets a whopper of a headache, and she comes basically fully formed outside of his head.
In armor, helmet, breastplate, spear from the head of Zeus. And she's the goddess of war and wisdom, which is an interesting pairing.
Enough, Kratos! With every city you destroy, the wrath of Olympus grows. Soon I will no longer be able to protect you.
Athena is the kind of conflicted character in the game. She always wanted to help out Kratos. She had a little bit of empathy for him, and I want to infuse a little bit of that kind of like more than empathy for Kratos.
The sexual tension between Kratos and Athena is bizarre, because it wasn't intended, and we finished the first game, and it's like, are they doing it, those two?
Do not turn your back on me.
I owe you nothing.
Then you leave me no choice.
Her loyalty is to the gods, so she wants to keep the peace. And she always kind of walks that fine line, and she's conflicted about whether or not she's going to cross that line for Kratos.
Athena! You conspire against me!
You don't know where she's coming from. You don't know if she's on the side of Zeus or if she's on the side of Kratos. You don't know if she has a thing for Kratos. So I'm very eager to see where her character sort of goes as we finish the story of Kratos, because I think there's more, definitely more to Athena than we've seen so far.